The Milwaukee Bucks made some pretty big additions in free agency this offseason to bring in three guys like Gary Trent Jr., Delon Wright, and Taurean Prince on veteran minimum contracts is extremely impressive, and their diverse skill sets should help improve this Bucks team as a whole next season. But lost in the shuffle of Milwaukee's free agent signings is 6'6" guard Stanley Umude, who spent his first 2 seasons in the NBA with Detroit before signing a 2-way contract with the Bucks on July 9th, meaning Umude is eligible to play in up to 50 of Milwaukee's 82 regular season games, while the rest of his time will be spent with the team's G League affiliate, the Wisconsin Herd. So although Umude doesn't technically have a guaranteed roster spot, I don't see why he couldn't earn one in the future, especially considering the depth of this Bucks roster. And if you look at some of the guys playing at Stanley's position of shooting guard or small forward, they may be on their way out very soon. Gary Trent Jr. and Taurean Prince may have just gotten there, but considering they're both on minimum contracts, they'll likely be 1-year rentals. Then you've got Pat Connaughton, who's clearly regressed from the guy he was a couple of years back, and is now on an expiring deal, with his name seemingly always being in trade rumors. And even MarJon Beauchamp isn't safe after coming off a pretty underwhelming summer league showing. So the odds of Stanley Umude working his way into a guaranteed deal with the Bucks isn't exactly out of reach. And it's something he's done before, as he signed a standard contract with the Detroit Pistons in late February after previously being on a 2-way. However, Detroit's reasoning for not bringing him back in the offseason may have something to do with an ankle fracture that he suffered in March, which ended up sidelining him for the remainder of the season. So there is some risk involved with taking on Umude, but he's only 25 years old, and his contract won't be fully guaranteed until January 7th of next season. So this should give the Bucks organization a decent chunk of time to figure out who Umude is at both an NBA and G League level. But as for right now, we've got his previous season to work with, where he put up about 17 points and 7 boards on 40% from the field and 33% from deep in 19 games with the Motor City Cruise, and about 5 points and 2 boards a night in almost 13 minutes of action in the 24 games he played for the Pistons last season. And the biggest thing that sticks out to me when comparing Umude's NBA stats to his G League stats is easily the efficiency, especially from beyond the arc, because Umude is a whole 12% better from deep in the NBA. And it's not like he doesn't shoot it either, as he attempted just over 2 threes per game last season, and was oftentimes one of Monty Williams' first guys off the bench when he was active, purely for his floor spacing ability, because let's be honest, there wasn't a whole lot of that on a bottom 5 3-point shooting Pistons team last season. So the only question is, why is his percentage so much worse in the G League, where the competition should theoretically be easier? Well, for one, his role is significantly increased in the G, and Umude just isn't a very good on-ball creator, which I'll dive deeper into later. But if you combine that with his volume jumping up to almost 9 attempts per game, and you're bound to see a drastic drop-off in 3-point percentage regardless of the level. Simply put, Umude's looks are just better in the NBA, so his percentage is higher. And I'd say that his NBA statistics are more indicative of the player he is than the G League numbers are, especially considering how hard it is to gauge your role in the G. And because of this, all of the film that we'll be using to break down Umude's game is from the 24 games he played with the Pistons last season. Plus, it's really hard to find good G League film, so this is what we've got. Anyways, with all of that out of the way, let's begin by assessing his offensive game, which, as I mentioned before, is heavily predicated on his ability as a floor spacer, as he's coming off a season in which he shot almost 46% from deep off the catch, despite Detroit's atrocious floor spacing. A big reason Umude enjoys so much success in this role can be attributed to his lightning quick release off the catch. Because his release point is so high, Stanley can get his shot off in some pretty tight windows, and it explains why he's so effective in late clock situations. He can still dip into his shot a little bit on open looks, but it's really not that big of a deal since it doesn't affect his percentage. But as good as he is at sniping catch and shoot 3-point looks, he really doesn't provide a lot of movement off the ball and primarily just sits in the corner, which is a stark difference from what we saw of him coming out of Arkansas, as you could constantly find Umude lurking the baseline and capitalizing on easy looks in the dunker spot. But he just hasn't found that same degree of off-ball activity at the NBA level quite yet. Another thing that hurts him as a spot-up catch-and-shoot type of guy is his inability to consistently attack closeouts, which in my opinion is a vital skill for floor spacing role players in 2024. If the closeout comes super late, usually he can take advantage, but if not, his lack of self-creation at an NBA level puts a cap on how effective he can be. And if you combine this with the fact that he sometimes moves before dribbling off the catch, it's just clear that this ability isn't in his bag yet, which doesn't even mention that he occasionally struggles to catch the ball. And all of this severely hurts him as an off-ball threat offensively. As for his on-ball creation, like I said before, it's just not there yet. The Pistons like to run various stagger and zoom actions for Umude to catch the ball in space, but if the opposing defense took away the 3-ball and made him put the rock on the floor, that was oftentimes a win for them, because he just lacks the self-creation needed to get him to his spots. But I will say this, if Umude can break down the defense and get to the rim, he's honestly a pretty solid finisher who can score through some tough contact. He's just not the most efficient interior scorer quite yet, because he doesn't always know when to attack. To put it simply, Stanley just needs to do a better job of understanding when he has an advantage while attacking downhill. And ultimately, most of his offensive shortcomings, aside from on-ball creation, come down to IQ. So it'll be interesting to see how he continues to develop on that side of the ball through more repetition. As for the defense, at 6'6", 210, with a 6'10 wingspan, his biggest positives come thanks to his length. I'd say he's at his best when defending in transition, as he can stop the break by tracking down the ball, or using his length to provide deterrent at the rim. His size also makes him pretty effective in the mid-post against wings, and where his length is most glaring is on the perimeter, as he's shown the ability to recover pretty late off ball and still provide an impactful contest, even being able to block the occasional 3. However, these late rotations are pretty common for Umude, and it can hurt his impact as an off-ball defender. He clearly understands positioning, as he knows where he needs to be to defend in the gaps, but a combo of not always seeing man and ball and overhelping can force him to rotate late. As an on-ball defender, he's not too strong at the point of attack, especially against guards, as he can tend to be an easy blow-by. And it certainly doesn't help that he bites on most pump fakes and hesitations, as he has quite the issue with staying on his feet. Which brings us to screen navigation, where he isn't particularly strong on or off the ball. On ball, he usually dies at the first point of contact, given he's not that great at the point of attack. And off the ball, he sometimes has a problem with holding his matchup, so they can't get through the screen, which is an easy whistle for refs. And as a whole, Umude fouls quite a bit. Per 36, he's nearly on pace to foul out, and while some of these calls against him can be pretty weak, he's definitely not innocent either, as he's often flailing his arms at the player with the ball in an attempt to get a steal or block, and this is just undisciplined defense. Playing straight up in general just seems to be a weakness of his, especially in help. But overall, Umude has the tools to be a pretty solid defensive player in this league. His point of attack defense, especially against quicker guards, is extremely questionable, but other than that, a lot of his miscues come down to discipline. The late rotations, swiping and picking up fouls, biting on pump fakes, they're all things that can be corrected with more time and experience. We have to keep in mind that Umude is only 25 years old and has played just 25 games as a whole over the span of his 2-year career. Combine this with the fact that he's played for the worst franchise in the entire NBA since joining the league, and I think we can give him somewhat of a pass for any minor flaws. So hopefully we can see his game continue to prosper in a winning environment like Milwaukee. And as I said before, maybe he can even play his way into a guaranteed contract.